All right, for this video, we are going to be looking at money and defining it and learning how to measure it, because that is at the heart of being able to lend and save it. So, money, by definition, our definition, is anything that is easily exchangeable for goods and services, and therefore eliminates the need for a barter economy. So, the roles of money that it needs to, by definition, fulfill is that money has to be a medium of exchange. In other words, you can use it to purchase things. Now, when you're in a barter economy, you might be able to use certain things to purchase things, but it doesn't work for everyone. And that's why a barter economy is fairly difficult. Once you have something like gold or silver or salt that you can use to exchange for lots of goods, then it becomes a medium of exchange. Money also has to have somewhat of a store of value. In other words, it has to not experience wild fluctuations within its value. Uh, Sometimes it can go through periods of rapid inflation, but generally speaking, the money itself shouldn't change that much over time in terms of what it can buy. A unit of account is the third role of money, and that just means you can use it to determine the relative worth of goods and services. So a dollar can tell you when something is worth $10 versus 50. The $50 item should be worth 5 times the value of the other one, at least in terms of how society values it. That's what we mean by a unit of account. It allows you to measure the value of one thing versus another. So if money doesn't really fill these roles, it's not doing its job as money. Now, there are three types of money that you have to know for this course. Commodity money. This is money that has actual intrinsic value. So this is sort of what you think of as old school money. Gold coins, silver coins. When I brought up salt before, salt was used as a commodity money. When you think of items that get traded around as money, I think the classic example is in prisons, cigarettes. At least in certain prisons, cigarettes are traded around as money. Those cigarettes become money. So that's commodity money, when the item itself has value. Commodity-backed money is when the money has no value, the currency has no value. It could be a bead, it could be a coin, it could be paper, but that has no real value unto itself. However, you can take that non-valuable item and convert it to a valuable good on demand. So you can essentially take it and turn it into a commodity. So when countries were on the gold standard, if the coin itself was not made of gold, but they had uh, coinage and they had paper currency, you could take it to a bank and get it transferred into gold. That's the idea of commodity-backed money. Fiat money is what most countries have today. This is when the value is derived entirely from its official status as means of exchange. In other words, the government says you have to accept it, and the government says that they will accept it as payment in taxes, therefore it has value. So this fiat money requires a lot of trust in your government and trust in the economy for it to work. So that's how we define money. So we've defined it. We said what it is, what it needs to do, and how it can be essentially looked at in terms of types of it. Now we have to look at how do we measure it. So monetary aggregates are those ways to measure it. The two you have to know for the AP test are M1 and M2. M1 is the currency and coin in circulation. It is all of the money that you have in your wallet or in your bank at home. You add in their checking deposits because there's no penalty for taking money out of your checking account. And traveler's checks, if anybody still uses them, would also be considered an M1. You consider M1 the most liquid money. In other words, you can get to it very, very quickly with no penalties. M2 adds near monies. So essentially what you do with M2 is you can fairly easily convert this stuff into cash, but it's a little bit less liquid than M1 and generally pays some amount of interest. And that's why you put it in M2. So M2, generally speaking, is M1 plus savings accounts, short-term CDs, which are certificates of deposit, and money market accounts. Now, a note on this is that this is what's currently in our curriculum. However, due to changes in the rules not too long ago put in, savings accounts are essentially treated the same as checking accounts by the Fed, and therefore a lot of money has been transferred and redefined out of savings accounts as M1. There are some that are still in the traditional idea of savings accounts, but for the most part, they are considered part of M1. So if you look at a graph of M1, you'd see it spiking in recent months. But for now, just know that savings accounts are in M2, along with short-term CDs and money market accounts, and not M1. So to define those two other terms in there, short-term CDs are certificates of deposit. In other words, you give the bank your money for a fixed time frame. So you say, listen, here's $1,000. I'm not going to be taking it out for 10 years. So pay me a higher amount of interest, because then the bank knows that they don't have to pay you that back for 10 years. So that's the idea behind it. You get paid a higher interest rate for purchasing this short-term CD because you're promising not to take it out. Now, you can take it out of that. However, you will usually have some type of penalty for it. Money market accounts are kind of like savings accounts, but a lot of times they have a higher interest rates and there's restriction on withdrawals. And this is to account for the bank can take your money in your money market account and invest it. So it carries a little bit of a variable interest rate in many cases, and it will sort of be invested out as the bank somewhat sees fit. But it is guaranteed. You're not going to lose the money in the money market account. Okay, and that is our general definition and measurement of money. And now we're going to be looking at what it means when you actually take that money and invest it. And first, we have to take a look at something called the time value of money before we get into the actual investment portion.